Death Row Confessions. What inmates reveal before execution. If you're brave enough to dive into the darkest corners of the human mind, smash that subscribe button right now, hit the like if you dare, and drop a comment telling me which death row confession haunts you the most, because what you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about justice. The fluorescent lights of San Quentin State Prison flickered at 11:47 p.m. on March 15, 2019. In cell block D, a man named Marcus Webb sat on the edge of his steel bunk, his execution scheduled for 12:01 a.m. 14 years he had spent on death row for the brutal murder of Sarah Chin, a college student found strangled in her apartment in Oakland. The evidence had been damning: his fingerprints on her windowsill, a witness who placed him near the scene, and a history of violent behavior. But now, with less than 15 minutes left to live, Marcus Webb was ready to talk. Warden Patricia Holbrook received the call at 11:50 p.m. Webb was requesting an emergency meeting with Detective James Rousseau, the now-retired investigator who had built the case against him. Holbrook's hand trembled as she dialed Rousseau's number. These last-minute confessions were rare, but when they came, they carried weight. Rousseau arrived at 11:55 p.m., his gray hair disheveled, still wearing his pajamas under a hastily thrown-on coat. He had spent years believing he had put away the right man. Webb's conviction had been his last major case before retirement. Now, facing the man through reinforced glass, Rousseau noticed something he had never seen before in Webb's eyes: genuine fear mixed with desperate urgency. "I didn't kill Sarah Chin," Webb said, his voice steady despite the clock ticking toward his death. "But I know who did, and I know why. And if I die tonight without telling you, 2 more people are going to die within the next 72 hours. Rousseau felt his stomach drop. "Marcus, we've been through this. Your prints were everywhere." "I was there," Webb interrupted, leaning forward. "I broke into her apartment that night. I'm a thief, detective, not a murderer. When I climbed through that window, Sarah was already dead. Still warm, blood still fresh. And I saw him leaving through the back door." "Who?" "Her psychology professor, Dr. Nathan Voss. I recognized him from the campus news. He was carrying something, a small leather journal. I panicked and ran, knocked over a lamp on my way out. That's why my prints were there." Rousseau's mind raced. Dr. Nathan Voss had testified at Webb's trial as an expert witness on criminal psychology. He had helped convict the man now sitting before him. "Why didn't you say this before?" Webb laughed bitterly. "Would you have believed a career criminal with a record? Voss had credibility, reputation, respect. I had nothing. My public defender told me to take a plea. I refused because I'm not a killer. The jury didn't care." The clock read 11:58 p.m. "If what you're saying is true, why would Voss kill her?" Webb's eyes locked onto Rousseau's. "Because Sarah found out what he was doing to his students. She kept records in that journal, everything. Names, dates, photos. She was going to expose him. And detective, he didn't stop with Sarah. Check the missing persons reports from Bay Area colleges over the past 5 years. Look for female students in their psychology programs." Rousseau's blood ran cold. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "Wait," Webb said urgently. "There's more. Voss has 2 teaching assistants now. Emily Rodriguez and Grace Turner. Sarah's journal had entries about them too. They were supposed to meet with the dean this week. If they go forward with their complaint." The warden appeared at the door. "Detective, it's time." Rousseau stood frozen as Webb was led away toward the execution chamber. His phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from his former partner at Oakland PD. The message contained 2 photos from the current missing persons database. Emily Rodriguez, last seen March 13th. Grace Turner, last seen March 14th. Both students at UC Berkeley. Both in Dr. Nathan Voss's advanced psychology seminar. But when Rousseau pulled up Dr. Voss's current faculty profile on the university website, his heart stopped. The photo showed Voss standing in his office, and there on his desk, barely visible but unmistakable, was a small leather journal with Sarah Chen's initials embossed in gold. Rousseau's hands trembled as he dialed Oakland PD at 12:03 a.m. Marcus Webb had been pronounced dead 2 minutes earlier. The execution chamber doors had closed, the lethal injection administered, and a man who might have been telling the truth had taken his last breath while the real killer potentially walked free. But there was no time for guilt, no time for second-guessing. 2 young women were missing, and if Webb's confession held any truth, they had less than 48 hours left. Detective Maria Santos answered on the first ring. She had been Russo's partner for 6 years before his retirement, and she knew that tone in his voice. "Jim, what's wrong?" "I need you to pull everything on Dr. Nathan Voss, psychology professor at UC Berkeley. And I mean everything. Financial records, phone logs, property holdings, the works. 2 of his students went missing this week." "The Voss?" "The expert witness who helps us profile suspects." "The same one." Russo's voice was ice. "Maria, I think we executed an innocent man tonight, and the killer has been consulting on our cases for 5 years. The line went silent for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Then Santos spoke, her voice hardened with determination. "I'm already at my computer. Give me 20 minutes. Russo drove through the empty streets of Berkeley at 12:30 a.m., his mind replaying every interaction he had ever had with Dr. Nathan Voss. The man was charming, respected, brilliant. He had given guest lectures at the police academy. He had helped close a dozen cases with his psychological insights. How had no one seen it? How had Russo missed it? His phone rang. "Santos. Jim, you need to hear this. Voss owns a property in Tilden Regional Park under his mother's maiden name. A cabin, secluded, no neighbors for miles. I'm sending units there now, but it's a 30-minute drive from the station. I'm 15 minutes away. I'm going in. Jim, you're retired. You can't just. 2 girls are dying, Maria. I can and I will. Send backup, but I'm not waiting. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, imagine how I felt researching this case. Hit that subscribe button because what happens next will leave you absolutely speechless. Drop a comment right now telling me, would you have believed Marcus Webb's confession, or would you have let the execution proceed? Your answer might surprise you. Russo pulled up to the cabin at 12:52 a.m. with his headlights off. The structure sat in complete darkness except for a faint glow coming from what appeared to be a basement window. His retired service weapon felt heavy in his hand as he approached. Every instinct screamed at him to wait for backup, but Webb's words echoed in his mind, 72 hours. The front door was locked. Russo moved around the perimeter, checking windows, looking for entry points. That's when he heard it, a muffled scream coming from below ground, desperate and terrified. His heart hammered against his ribs as he found a basement window, already cracked open for ventilation. He dropped through, landing in a dimly lit concrete room that smelled of mildew and something else, something metallic and wrong. Blood. His eyes adjusted to the darkness, and what he saw made his blood freeze. Emily Rodriguez and Grace Turner were chained to opposite walls, both alive but badly injured. Between them stood Dr. Nathan Voss, but he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, holding a video camera, documenting everything. Russo recognized her immediately, Dr. Jennifer Marsh, another psychology professor at Berkeley, Voss's longtime research partner. "Detective Russo," Voss said calmly, as if they had run into each other at a faculty mixer. "I wondered if Marcus would talk. He always was unpredictable. That's why he made such a perfect scapegoat. Step away from them. Now." Russo's gun was steady, aimed directly at Voss's chest. Jennifer Marsh laughed, a sound so cold it seemed to drop the temperature in the room. "Or what? You'll shoot us? You're retired detective. No badge, no authority, no warrant. Anything you do here is inadmissible. We've studied the law extensively. We know exactly how far we can push before the system breaks." "This isn't research," Russo growled. "This is murder." "No," Voss corrected, his voice taking on a professorial tone. "This is evolution. Understanding the human response to extreme trauma, documenting the breaking point of the psyche. Sarah Chin was brilliant, but she lacked vision. She couldn't see the greater purpose of our work. These 2, however, they're providing invaluable data." Emily sobbed, her voice barely a whisper. "Please. He killed 4 others. He showed us videos. Please." Before anyone could move, the sound of sirens pierced the night. Backup was arriving. Voss's calm expression cracked for the first time, replaced by rage. He lunged toward a table where a syringe lay filled with clear liquid. Rousseau fired. The shot echoed through the concrete chamber like thunder. Voss dropped, clutching his shoulder, the syringe clattering across the floor. But Jennifer Marsh was faster than anyone expected. She grabbed a knife from the table and pressed it against Grace Turner's throat. "Everyone stops or she dies right now," Jennifer hissed. "I've spent 10 years building this research. I'm not letting some retired cop with a guilt complex destroy it." Footsteps pounded above them. Santos's voice called out, "Jim, where are you?" The knife pressed deeper. A thin line of blood appeared on Grace's neck. Rousseau's mind raced through scenarios, none of them good. Then Emily Rodriguez did something that changed everything. Despite her chains, despite her injuries, she swung her leg out and kicked the basement support beam with everything she had. But when the ancient wood splintered and the ceiling began to crack, Rousseau saw something that made his stomach turn. Carved into the beam, barely visible in the dim light, were names. Dozens of names. Saracen was there. So were 8 others he didn't recognize. And at the very top, in fresh cuts still showing raw wood underneath, Emily Rodriguez and Grace Turner. This wasn't research. This wasn't even a killing spree. This was a collection. The basement ceiling groaned as decades-old wood split apart. Dust and debris rained down as Santos and 4 officers crashed through the door above. Jennifer Marsh's knife wavered for a split second, her eyes darting between the collapsing beam and the armed police flooding the stairwell. That split second was all Rousseau needed. He fired again, this time hitting Marsh's hand. The knife spun away as she screamed, clutching her shattered fingers. Santos and her team swarmed the basement, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Within seconds, both Voss and Marsh were on the ground, cuffed, bleeding, and finally powerless. Emily and Grace were freed from their chains, paramedics rushing in to stabilize them. Rousseau stood in the corner, staring at that beam, at those carved names. 9 victims they knew nothing about. 9 families who had spent years wondering what happened to their daughters, their sisters, their friends. "Jim." Santos approached him, her face pale. "We found the journal." Sarah Chen's journal. It was in Voss's office, safe along with video files. Hundreds of hours of footage. This goes back 15 years, maybe longer. If you think the story ends here, you haven't been paying attention. Smash that subscribe button right now because the truth behind these death row confessions gets even darker, and I'll be covering more cases that will shake your faith in the justice system. Comment below, how many wrongful executions do you think happen every year? The answer will terrify you. The sun rose over Berkeley at 6:17 a.m. Rousseau sat in an interrogation room across from Dr. Nathan Voss, whose shoulder had been bandaged by the prison medical staff. The professor's calm demeanor had returned, his eyes cold and analytical even in handcuffs. "You want to know why?" Voss said before Rousseau could speak. "Everyone always wants to know why." "I want to know about Marcus Webb. Did you frame him deliberately?" Voss smiled. "Frame is such a crude word, detective. I facilitated justice taking its natural course. Marcus was a criminal, a waste of human potential. He broke into Sarah's apartment that night purely by coincidence. Divine timing, really. I saw him fleeing, realized the opportunity, and made a calculated decision. His fingerprints were already there. All I had to do was remove mine and wait for your incompetent investigation to follow the obvious trail." Rousseau's fists clenched under the table. "You testified at his trial. You helped convict him." "Of course I did. It was fascinating, actually. A real-time study in confirmation bias and systemic failure. You wanted to believe Marcus was guilty because it made your job easier. The jury wanted to believe it because he fit their profile of a killer. Everyone played their part perfectly. Except Marcus, of course. He kept insisting on his innocence. Quite tedious, really. And Jennifer Marsh? How long has she been your partner?" 17 years. We met in graduate school. She understood the vision from the beginning. Traditional psychology is built on surveys and controlled experiments, sterile and meaningless. We wanted to study the human mind at its breaking point, to document the exact moment when hope dies and survival instinct takes over. Sarah Chin was our 9th subject. Emily and Grace would have been 19 and 20. The door opened. Santos entered with a file folder, her expression unreadable. "Jim, we need to talk. Outside. Now." In the hallway, Santos handed him the folder. Inside were police reports, missing person cases, and crime scene photos spanning 2 decades. We cross-referenced the names on that beam with cold cases across California. Every single one was a student, female, ages 19 to 24, all connected to either Voss or Marsh at some point. "But Jim, there's something else." She pulled out a separate document. We found correspondence between Voss and 3 other professors at different universities: Stanford, UCLA, and University of Washington. They were sharing research, comparing notes, trading what they called methodologies. Rousseau felt sick. "You're telling me there's a network?" "I'm telling you this is bigger than we thought. The FBI is taking over the investigation. They're executing search warrants at 3 more locations right now." Hit that like button if you believe the death penalty should be abolished after hearing stories like this, or comment if you think it should stay. Either way, your voice matters, and this channel is about sparking real conversations about real injustices. Don't forget to subscribe because next week, I'm revealing a case where a death row inmate's confession exposed an entire police department's corruption. 3 months later, Rousseau stood at Marcus Webb's grave with Webb's mother, a woman named Dorothy who had never stopped believing in her son's innocence. The state had issued a posthumous exoneration, but no amount of paperwork could bring Marcus back. "He told me," Dorothy whispered, tears streaming down her weathered face. In his last letter, he said he was going to tell the truth even if no one believed him. He said some things are worth dying for if it means saving someone else. Rousseau had no words. He had spent 30 years in law enforcement, had closed hundreds of cases, had put dozens of criminals behind bars. But he had also executed an innocent man, and that weight would never leave him. The investigation into Voss and Marsh's network uncovered 23 victims across 4 states. 6 more professors were arrested. The FBI estimated there could be as many as 40 victims total, spanning back to the early 2000s. Emily Rodriguez and Grace Turner survived, though both required extensive therapy. They became advocates for criminal justice reform, speaking publicly about their ordeal and about Marcus Webb's sacrifice. Dr. Nathan Voss and Dr. Jennifer Marsh were sentenced to life without parole in separate maximum security facilities. They would never see each other again, never continue their research, never harm another student. But the damage was done. As Rousseau drove away from the cemetery, his phone buzzed with a message from Santos. It was a news article from Oregon. A death row inmate there was requesting an emergency meeting with investigators, claiming he had information about unsolved murders connected to a university professor. Another confession. Another race against time. Another chance to get it right. Rousseau pulled over and read the article twice. Then he called Santos. "Book me a flight to Portland," he said. "Someone needs to listen." Because Marcus Webb had taught him something in those final minutes before his execution. Sometimes the most dangerous people aren't the ones behind bars. Sometimes they're the ones we trust the most, hiding in plain sight, using their credentials and charisma as camouflage while they destroy lives in the name of knowledge. And sometimes, the only thing standing between justice and tragedy is whether someone chooses to believe a desperate voice crying out from death row. The truth doesn't always set you free, but it might save the next victim. If this story changed how you see the criminal justice system, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share this video, and comment with your thoughts. These stories need to be told, these voices need to be heard, and together, we can shine a light on the darkest corners of our legal system. Because the next Marcus Webb might be sitting in a cell right now, telling the truth that no one wants to hear.